Hi, welcome back to the Happy Burrow Homestead. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 5 different things that we're doing with our egg abundance. Since our chickens started laying again this spring, we've had a lot of extra eggs. So the first thing that we're doing is we're preserving some of them. We're going to be water glassing some and freezing some. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how I'm doing the water glassing process. I'm going to be using a half-gallon mason jar. You can use a 5-gallon bucket or any different size container as long as you have your ratio of water and pickling lime. Okay, so we need 3 things to preserve our eggs. The first is clean, unwashed eggs. We don't want to use store-bought eggs because the unwashed eggs that we've collected, they still have the bloom, which is basically a film that protects the egg on them. And once you wash them, that goes away. So the bloom will actually keep the pickling lime from entering into the egg and helps to preserve it. So we're going to be using our unwashed eggs, but we want to make sure that they're clean. We're also going to be using Mrs. Wage's pickling lime and just water. If you are using chlorinated water, you'll want to let your water sit out for about 24 hours to let that chlorine evaporate. If you do have a filter, then you can just use your house water. So first off, I'm going to be using gloves when I handle the pickling lime because it can cause skin irritation and I'm kind of prone to dry skin. So our measurements are going to be for every 1 cup of water, we want 1 ounce of pickling lime. I'm going to be using a half-gallon and about 1.5 quarts of water. So my ratio is going to be about 3 tablespoons of lime because 1 ounce is equal to 2 tablespoons in dry measurements. Okay, now we're going to just whisk the pickling lime and the water together. And it should look milky white like this. Now it's important to remember that we are not actually pickling these eggs even though we're using pickling lime. We're just preserving them. So they should be able to stay good for about anywhere from 8 months to 2 years using this method because it will seal the shell. So when you add your eggs in, you'll want to put the pointy side down because they do have an air pocket, so this will give you the best results. And you want to just set them in to your liquid here and make sure that they stay covered. And you'll want to also keep in mind that you can add eggs as you collect them, so you can open it again. We're not sealing this jar. You don't need to seal your container. You will be able to open it up and use them as you like, or you can add more eggs to preserve as you go as well. Okay, so now we just need to make sure we have a lid on this. If you are not using something that has a lid that will attach, you want to make sure that at least you do have it covered to prevent evaporation or from any bugs or anything to get inside. And then we're just going to store it somewhere cool in our house because we don't want it to get too hot and out of the sunlight. So we're going to go ahead and just put this away, and we're going to test this again here in a few months and see how these eggs turn out. So we'll make sure to update you on that. The next thing that I'm going to do to preserve some of our eggs is I'm going to freeze them. And I do that in 2 different ways. The first thing I'm going to do is make some mini quiches here that I'm going to bake and then freeze, and then I will also be just freezing the eggs basically out of their shell. So I'll show you both of those. And for this, I do use eggs that we have washed. These have been collected and washed and stored in the refrigerator. I'm going to use a silicone muffin pan. Each spot holds about 1 egg. So I'm going to make 6 mini quiches in this, and so I'll use 6 eggs for this. And I just crack them into the bowl here, and I'm going to save my shells, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with those later on. For this mini quiche recipe, I just use the eggs. I'm going to be using some brown sausage that we had left over from breakfast this morning, some cheese, and garlic salt. You are free to add anything into that. That's why I love this recipe. Sometimes we add tomatoes or some crushed up spinach, different vegetables, but it's super easy. So we're just gonna go ahead and mix it up and then put it into our cupcake dish here. So adding in a little bit of garlic salt, go ahead and mix that up, Kate. Okay. So this is an easy thing that you can either refrigerate or freeze, and we like it because on those days where we have a lot going on in the morning, we can just pop them in the microwave or heat them up and eat them very easily. So after your eggs are whipped up like this, we're just gonna pour them into the little muffin containers here and fill them almost all the way up, but not completely, because they will rise a little bit as they bake. Then what I like to do is just put the sausage and the cheese in on top rather than putting it in the bowl, because sometimes it doesn't distribute very easily. We have our oven set to 375 degrees, and we'll put these in for about 15 minutes. We'll know they're done because they'll start to be not runny and look kind of more like scrambled eggs. So these took a little bit closer to 20 minutes, and I think a lot of that was just the size of the egg and the cheese. But from 15 to 20 minutes it usually takes, and you can see that they rose quite a bit. So I'm gonna let these cool, and then once they're cool, I'm going to be cracking one egg per space in here. And then once they're all cool, I'm going to go ahead and just freeze the whole pan. And then once they're frozen, you can simply pop them out and put them into a Ziploc bag or some other container and put them in your freezer. And when you're ready to eat them, you can pull them out and cook them or just reheat depending on which egg we're using. The pre-cooked will just reheat, and the uncooked we will just go ahead and cook. The next thing we're doing with some of our eggs is we are hatching some of them out. Now we have collected 42 eggs for the incubator. Some of them came from our farm, another came from a good friend, and we bought 18 from someone in town that had Buff Orpingtons, and we are really excited to add those into our flock, so hopefully we get a good hatch for those guys. So that's the second thing we're doing, is we're hatching some of them out to grow our flock. Now we've noticed that a lot of our chickens, that first year that we've had them, they continue to lay during the winter most of the time. So we want to continue to have new chicks added into our flock every year to keep that egg production up in the winter. But we're also preserving, so just in case it goes down like it did this year a bit, we have some that we've put aside. The third thing we're doing is we've finally started to sell our eggs. Because we've had such an abundance, we've been just so blessed to be able to share them with other people. So we've been selling our eggs, and since we have a rooster, we do have the option to sell eggs for other people to hatch. And the other thing we could do, depending on how many hatch out of these 42, is we could even sell the chicks. The fourth thing that we're doing with them is simply eating them. We have them for breakfast very often, but the thing I want to share with you is that we have found a way to hard boil our farm fresh eggs and actually have them easy to peel. That has been such a frustration of mine, just trying to hard boil and then basically losing most of the egg, because when I went to peel it, the white was just sticking to the shell, and I felt like we were wasting so much of the eggs, losing them to that. So we have found a way to hard boil them that has been easy to peel, and I'm very excited to share that with you. All you need is an Instant Pot and some ice and some water. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our Instant Pot out, and we're going to put 1 cup of water into the bottom of the Instant Pot. Then we're going to take about a dozen fit into here, of washed eggs. So you want these to be clean, and they should be washed. And we're just going to set these into the bottom. Then we're going to put our lid on here, and we're going to set this to seal. Okay, so we're going to set this to pressure cook. Now this might vary depending on the model that you have, but we're going to set it to pressure cook, and then we want this to be set to normal, and it should set to 5 minutes. It might take a few minutes to get to pressure before the timer starts, so we're just gonna wait. So while I'm waiting for this to get up to pressure, I'm going to fill this bowl with ice water, because I'm going to put them straight into an ice bath as soon as they get finished. So this just got done counting down from 5 minutes. Now we're just going to let it rest for another 5 minutes, and it's just going to naturally vent. As soon as this hits the 5-minute mark, we're going to unseal manually from the top. I like to use a wooden spoon or utensil to do that. The steam is very hot, so if you're gonna try this, make sure you stay clear of it because it can burn you. So we've gone ahead and unplugged this. Now just remember that your appliance is going to still be hot, so you don't want to be touching much more than the handle at this point. And I like to use tongs to pull them out and put them right into the bath here. We have one that cracked, and that's actually fine. It will peel just fine. Probably actually easier that way. But all the rest of them look like they did just fine. And then we're gonna wait again until these are completely cool, and then we're gonna go ahead and peel them. Okay, so we're gonna crack open one of our hard-boiled eggs here so you can see how easy they are to peel. I'm just going to dry this off first. You can see how easy this is to peel now. And really the key is to get it really cold really fast and keep it that way. Now the last thing we're doing with our eggshells is we're going to actually bake them and use them both to feed back to our chickens and for our gardens. So when we use our eggs, we save all the shells. As you can see, we've been saving them for a little while. And we just make sure we wash them, and then we lay them on a pan and bake them at 200 for about 45 minutes. Then when they're finished, we're gonna crush them up and get them ready to go out to our chickens and to our garden. I like to line my baking sheets with parchment paper just for easier cleanup. And this is a super easy, you don't need to add anything to them. We're just gonna go ahead and lay them out here, and it's fine if they're kind of stacked up. They'll still work just fine. All the items that I've been using today, from the Instant Pot to our pickling lime and things like that, anything that I found helpful, we're gonna make sure we link it in the description of this video. So if there's anything you're looking for, go ahead and check it out there. So these are all ready to go into the oven now. And like I said, we'll bake them at 200 degrees for about 45 minutes. Now that our eggshells are finished baking, we're just gonna let them cool for a minute. And then what we're going to do is we're actually gonna put them into a Ziploc bag. And I usually just use a rolling pin to kind of crush them down so they get, a little bit more workable. And then I'm going to put them into a small food processor. And you can use if you have a food processor, or you can just beat them down yourself in the bag. But I find the food processor helps. We'll pour them in here and just break them down a little bit further. And then after that, they'll be ready to use either as a supplement to our chickens or to our gardens. So that's a great supplement for any calcium deficiencies you might have. So that's the last thing that we're going to be doing with our eggs. Again, the things that we talked about today was just preserving, either water glassing or freezing. We're just eating them outright. We're hatching a lot of our eggs this year. We're also selling them. And finally, we're using them as a supplement to our chickens and our gardens. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.